This is Tim,
I'm Mulele.
and this is Critiquing Comics. Welcome to Critiquing Comics. This is Tim with Mulele in Tokyo on Skype, and we got another submission from a guy who wants to be known as Jonny Bloozit, and this is a comic called Nowhere Man. He sent us 5 issues as PDF files, and I guess he's selling these on Comixology also. Basically, so in the first 2 pages of the story, we meet this guy who we find out his name is Richard later on. In the first 2 pages, he gets some kind of bad medical news. It's not exactly clear. The doctor is showing him a picture of his lungs. And page 2, he jumps off a bridge. And then he sort of wakes up in the desert, but he feels like he's been there a long time. He's not sure how long he's been there, why is he not thirsty, all the kind of weird things. And then a guy comes riding up on a rhinoceros. And the guy he recognizes as Weirdo Bob, who looks a lot like 80s Weird Al, who was a DJ who died when he was hit by a drunk driver. But Weirdo Bob doesn't seem to remember that or know anything about that. When Richard starts freaking out, Bob kind of says, it's just reality's different than we thought, and this is the dream time, and whatever. And then Richard wanders through some other situations that it's kind of an Alice-in-Wonderland type of thing. In that, like Alice, she goes to the Mad Tea Party and she sees a Cheshire Cat and all that, and it's kind of these, a series of meetings in different situations. And this is kind of like that too. And each situation felt to me like there was some social commentary there and some commentary on kind of life and death. And the art was definitely above average also, I thought. This was a pretty good one that I would like to see the rest of. What did you think of it?
I wasn't thinking Alice in Wonderland, but now that you say that, yeah, it's definitely that. I was thinking more of a road trip, but yeah, I like the artwork and I like the story, but it seems like there's no superfluous material here. It is what it needs to be to progress the story.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when he's talking about his father and that his father was also sick, and looking at the x-ray that the doctor's holding up, it looks like lung cancer. And he talks about his father having cancer. His father promised that if he got too sick, that he would just kill himself, but then in the end he couldn't do that. And it kind of speaks back to him jumping off of the bridge, realizing that he has cancer, which I thought was very concise the way it was told, because he jumps off the bridge first and then tells his father's story, which, yeah, it worked for me really, really well. It's a black and white comic with little spots of red here and there, at least in the first issue. The second issue, I didn't see too much red. I should mention that although we received 5 issues, I read the first 2. There's a little bit of red in the second one.
Yeah, I guess that red kind of goes away in the later issues. I'm looking through 5 here and I don't see any.
Yeah, but I really liked it, even though I only read the first 2 issues. I mean, they're about 15 pages each. The first 2 issues were really good. I really wanted to read more. I didn't have time before this podcast to read the other the other two, but my opinion is pretty complete. The comic is definitely worth reading. It's well drawn. It's well written. It's very tight. I don't know exactly where he's going with it, but he never. The writer never quite says that this guy is dead, and so we don't know exactly. But he kind of hints to an assumption.
Mm-hmm.
The character is made about his life that he is dead. And now that he's dead, and in the afterworld, he's deciding to look for his father, which is, I don't know. After the bit about his suicide and his father's inability to commit suicide, and some of the other hints that he drops about his father, I'm really on board to see how this goes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I really, really liked it.
Yeah, I thought it was quite good too. I could tell as soon as I started reading it that this was going to be a fairly high quality one. There were a few little things that bothered me that I wanted to mention. So the balloon placement was a little confusing sometimes. He seems to be working the balloons left to right without thinking about where they are vertically.
Oh.
And you need to be able to read not only left to right, but also top to bottom. And sometimes he's writing them with a sequence where you have to go up and to the right to read the next one. And I tended to want to read the top one first. And so then I would find that I was reading things out of order.
Oh, okay.
So it needs to be, like Easy Reader said, top to bottom, left to right.
Yeah.
Yes, we have electric company references in our podcast. Also, now the transition from issue 4 to issue 5 was a little bit jarring. It would have been fine had it not been a break between issues. If you were just reading all together as a book, and it would be seamless. And so he has met Anansi, which I believe is a mythical character from Africa, who is kind of a trickster. And at the end of issue 4, he and Anansi encounter these, what does he call them? Dream eaters, who are these really kind of hideous looking bugs. They look like fuzzy bees with big noses.
Sorry. What is the gap that you refer to between issues?
Well, so at the end of number 4, Anansi is talking to the bugs, and he says, "I'll make a deal with you. If you can solve my riddle, you can bite me. But if you can't solve it, you have to let both of us go." And the last panel, he says, "Then shake, that seals the deal." And then that's just plop, the end. Yeah, yep. That's the last page. There's nothing after that. And it feels a little abrupt. And then the beginning of the next issue, it picks up with him telling the riddle, and there isn't any kind of, I don't know, maybe I've been too conditioned by Marvel and DC type things, but I feel like there should be some kind of slight introduction or reminder of where we are at the beginning of the next issue, when you've continued from one issue to the next like that. There's no kind of summary, exposition, whatever. It just picks right up where it left off, which just felt a little abrupt to me, a little awkward. So,
well, he does the same thing between issues 1 and 2.
Yeah, I think he does.
He's walking through the town, and it's getting near sunset, and then the beginning of number 2. He's just standing on the edge of this cliff overlooking this oasis at night. And I didn't have a problem with it. It was...
Yeah, I think that one didn't bother me so much.
Well, I mean, the end of chapter 2 is also very abrupt, but the story part is done. And this writer wastes no time. Absolutely not. And I should say, the 6-panel format.
Yeah, it's a really strict 6-panel grid.
Yeah. There's some dogma there that is pretty powerful. He wastes no time in telling his story. He's got a lot of story to tell, and he tells it very concisely. And so when he gets to the end, there's no meandering, no warm fuzzies, no kind of making sure the reader is okay and everybody's on the right page. And it kind of reminds me of Peter Jackson when asked about why there was no recap for Lord of the Rings 2. He simply said, it's available at the video shop. People can go and rent it. I'm not going to do a recap for people who are too lazy. And it also reminds me of the Airtight Garage by Mobius, where years ago, I was reading that comic in French, and being that I don't know French, it would just say at the top of the page, the story so far, and then some bullshit in French. And of course, I'm just looking at the artwork, but it's like, okay, whatever. And then I see the English version, and it said, the story so far. And then underneath that, in English, it's just gibberish. It's nonsense. Because he didn't care. He did a series of them. Because one of them says story so far, and it's in some sort of alien language. Because it's a science fiction thing. It's kind of a goof on it, because it doesn't really matter. But I kind of feel that with this. You don't need that recap and firm, solid ending. Start, finish, next. And there's something so tight about it that I really respect it here. The writer knows what he's doing, and so I can trust that wherever we go with this, it's going to be fine. The artist, the writer and the artist are the same person?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah, well, as a storyteller then, he really knows what he's doing. His compositions, his art style, everything is solid all the way through. And with the caveat that I'm only looking at the first 2 issues. But I'm very impressed.
Yeah, I think you would not be disappointed reading the rest of it.
Okay, well, I will do so after the podcast. But yeah, for the purpose of this podcast, most definitely worth checking out. I'd say the one thing is that 15 pages seems a little bit short, but for the story itself, yeah, it's kind of worth it. If you go back and analyze what he just said, or what he just showed you, story-wise, it is definitely worth it. Sorry, let me launch into another story. So years ago, I'm in Los Angeles. I'm watching a band called Man Man. Do you know Man Man?
No.
Okay, Man Man. I don't know what their thing is. But anyway, I like them. I still like them. And I went to their concert. I think it was the only concert I went to while I was in LA. It was like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And the band gets on stage in a semicircle, kind of not facing the audience. They're facing each other. And they play for 45 minutes solid. No breaks between songs. No chatter to the audience. When the concert is done, one of the members waves to the audience and they walk off stage. Now I'm just like, what? That's it? More. So I'm not really interested in the second band. I guess that was the main act, but the main act doesn't interest me. I don't even know who they are. I wander out into the lobby, and there's the manager of the band selling T-shirts. So I buy a T-shirt and I ask him, man, 45 minutes, it's kind of short for a concert. He's like, look, there's no talk, there's no chatter, there's no bullshit. It's just straight music, and it's like running a marathon. Now tonight, everything went smoothly and there were no problems. But usually, the way the concert ends is that they play so hard that one of them throws up on stage, and that's the end of the concert. I just thought, Jesus Christ, do I really want to see something like that? But he said it's just pure music. There's no bullshit. And in a way, I kind of feel this comic is the same. It's pure comic storytelling, no bullshit.
So it just seems short because they took out all the stuff that didn't need to be there.
Right. And I compare it to like some of the boy bands in Japan who start telling these endless stories like they're on a talk show. And it's at least 30, 40 minutes of chatter and then an hour or so of awful singing. Yeah, and so the comic is very, very tight, very tidy.
Mm-hmm.
And although it feels a little short, yeah, there's no bullshit. So read it twice.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, reading it the second time, I was picking up things that I didn't the first time in terms of like kind of what he was trying to get across with each scene.
Yeah.
So yeah, it stands up to repeat readings, definitely.
Yeah. But also the way he told the first issue, or the way he wrote the first issue was good enough. Or good enough. It was fine in that when I read it, or rather when I went back to it and looked at other things, there were details that were popping out at me that where I kind of was reading along but didn't realize that he was setting me up for the next part in a way that doesn't feel like I'm being set up. You know, when you're reading a story or watching a movie and there's this obvious thing that seems out of place, like introducing the secret handgun that the father keeps in some part of the house in the beginning of the movie. And then you realize, oh yeah, so when the home invasion comes, that's the thing that's going to save them, and it plays out exactly like that. It's very obvious placement of plot device stuff. Here, you don't feel that, and so that it was just very well done, very, very subtle.
Yeah. If you'd like us to critique your comics, send a PDF or a link to mail@deconstructingcomics.com. Send us your best 30 pages, and we'll talk about them here on Critiquing Comics. So, till next time, this is Tim.
And Mulele.
Thanks for listening to Critiquing Comics.